Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmettmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast. This is your host, Emmett Muckles. You can find the podcast on iTunes. You can find it on Stitcher. But most of all, I need you to come to emmettmuckles.com where everything is hosted and you can get all the wares that you need. Today, my guest is Elliott Katz. Now, we're in a different time in America. So Elliott said, you know, there's a need and I'm going to address it. So he wrote a very succinct book on being the strong man a woman wants. Timeless wisdom on being a man. How are you, Elliott?
I'm great. How are you, Emmett?
I'm doing good. You know, we have a heat wave here where I'm located, and I am enjoying every degree Fahrenheit Celsius that the sun gives us.
Well, we're having one here too. It's hot. It's nice. It's nice.
All right, so let's get into it quickly. First of all, I always ask for a backstory because nothing just surfaces out of thin air. There is usually inspiration or there is something someone experiences, but there is something that ties everything together. What was that thing that brought you into being the author of Being a Strong Man a Woman Wants?
You're exactly right, Emmett. So I was married for 10 years, and I thought I was a great husband. Then I got divorced. And like a lot of people, at first I blamed the other person. Then I came to the point of asking myself,
hello?
What do I... Hi, there's the noise in the background. Do you hear that noise?
No, I don't.
No? Oh, okay, I heard it. Okay, it sounded like a car. Okay.
So you ask yourself...
Okay, maybe I'll just start over.
All right.
Okay, I asked myself, what do I have to learn from this? I don't want to go through this again. So I set out on a journey to learn what does it mean to be a man in a relationship, in a marriage. So, you know, first thing I did was I started listening and watching other men and talking to other men, and we're all confused. The more I listen to them, the more we're all confused. Then I started reading books on relationships. I read like a mountain of books, and they really didn't say anything to me, but what does it mean to be a man in a relationship? And then I turned to the wisdom, the writings that men have written over the centuries about what it means to be a man, advice to younger men about what it means to be a man. And I was blown away because what I read coincided with what I heard women complain is lacking in men today. They don't show leadership, they don't make decisions, and they don't take responsibility. There seems to be this giant disconnect between all the things that men have heard today and what women really want.
Now, I was reading the book, and
Okay.
I was listening to it, and I grew up in a family of there was predominantly women. There were 13 children on my mother's side, and like 75% were women. And one of the prevailing thoughts, and I'm not just talking about that, but I'm talking about the experiences I've had as well, is that I also hear the very opposite of that. Particularly, it depends on the generation that you're referring to. And the reason I bring this up is because the messages that we are bombarded with are counterintuitive to what you were saying in the book. And it's just a mixed message. So what are men to do when they come across these situations?
You know, you've hit the nail on the head, and that's exactly the situation today. And what's really lacking today is that traditionally a father or other male role model taught a younger boy, a son, about what it means to be a man, just by being a role model or by talking to him. And that's really been lost because I've come to realize that for most men, that being a man doesn't come naturally. A lot of men, they think, well, you know, I'll get married, I'll just do whatever my wife tells me, and then she should be happy, because why wouldn't she be happy if I just do whatever she says? And they're so frustrated. Women are frustrated. They feel like the husband is just another one of the children. And they say things like, I'm a married single parent. And the men don't understand that. Like, I'm being such a nice guy. I'm not being controlling. Everyone fears being accused of being controlling. It's you hit the nail on the head, because it's all the things that men are being told today. Don't be controlling. I'm not saying be controlling. I'm saying show leadership. And there's a vast difference between them. They're really opposites.
I am so glad that you brought that up. One of the big things that stood out to me was, I want you to be strong, but I don't want you to be controlling. Now, when you bring that up, it's kind of like in the conversations of that I've had in my life, where someone confuses these two words together, ignorance and stupid. While they have very different meanings, if you are not versed in what their definitions are, you can sorely get them confused. The same thing with strong versus controlling. How does that play out? I mean, what are some of the things that dictate strong versus a controlling person?
Oh, they're really opposite. They're miles apart. So a controlling person is someone who's insecure. They're only thinking about themselves, and they don't really care about the other person or other people. If it's a family, a strong person who shows leadership, a leader thinks about the greater good. He thinks about what's best for his family. It's not necessarily what's best for himself. He's thinking about the greater good, and he's strong because he stands up for what he believes is right, even though it may mean sacrifices on his part, but he does what he thinks is right. He's not like a lot of men today. You know, they blame their wives for everything. She pressured me into this, she pressured me into that, then it went wrong just like I thought it would. And then he wants to blame her. I said, and they can't understand why people have no sympathy for them, because the reality is, right? You could relate, right? There's no sympathy because you're the man. You're supposed to be strong. As much as we have the people say these things about, being sensitive and all this stuff, it'd be, that's another question. But, be the strong man. Don't give into something that's wrong and then blame your wife when it went wrong, just like you thought it would. You're laughing. I've heard this situation many times. Like, I remember, I'd say one of the turning points for me was, a few months after my marriage ended, I got together with a fellow who I knew, like just sort of an acquaintance, who had also recently separated from his wife. And, we were wallowing in mutual victimhood. Like, we had so many situations that were similar. Here, I thought my situation was uniquely crazy. He's telling me things, the same thing. I said, wow. Until he told me something that shocked me. He said, his wife had run out $50,000 on the credit cards. And I thought, like, that's something I would never have allowed. Because I knew that you don't do that. But I said to him, how could you let that go on? You have children. And it really hit me. It's like, his wife was wrong, but how could you let it go on? You know it's wrong. You're the man. You're responsible. You got kids to feed. So really, if it's wrong, being strong means saying it's wrong. We're not doing it. It doesn't matter what happens. If it's wrong, and you got to be strong and stand up for your family.
All right, I'm going to deep dive on that particular note that you brought up. So, someone's spouse does something that is counterproductive for the relationship, and let's say, without being controlling, okay, you approach this individual, and I'm just being the devil's advocate here. You approach the individual and go and say, hey, we need to have a conversation about your behavior, what's happening. It's wrong. It's costing us more than just the money. It's costing our children, it's costing our household, and it's bringing undue stress on the relationship. Okay? Get that out. And the person responds, oh, you know what? You're right. I understand. Blase, blase, blase. I'll try to do it. I'll try to
nothing changes,
and
right?
Nothing changes. What's the
Right.
recourse when you're dealing with another adult? And I'm going to say this in this particular day and age because we are not in the 1950s or 1960s. In the 1960s, things began to change, and on the backs of the civil rights movement was the women's rights movement, and there's a change in thought process from thousands of years of relationships up until the 1960s. And many men are adjusting 50 years later to that process. So it's a very difficult thing. How do you
Okay.
navigate that?
You've asked a great question. There's actually two parts to your question. So the first thing, let's say the first situation, you want to talk about her behavior. Say, your behavior is this, you've got to change. You talk like that, she's not going to change because that's the worst thing you could do. Because that's everybody talks about, we have to improve communication. I say, you know what? Communication, if it's done the right way, but the type of communication that people think they need to do is the same as another word that starts with com, complain. You just go up to your spouse and start giving your list of complaints, they're going to shut down. Just like if somebody went to you, your spouse went to you and said, Emmett, you got to stop doing this, you got to change this, you got to change this, you would just shut down. You don't want to hear it, So that's the worst way to do it. So what's a better way to do it? Well, it depends what the situation is. But maybe think about what a leader in a organization does. If you start, criticizing your staff, always putting them down, they're going to leave. You have to talk to them in a way that they need to be spoken to. That's leadership. Leadership is communicating to the other person in the way they need to be spoken to get them to do something they don't want to do and feel good about it. That's what you need to do. So think about it. Maybe if let's say, for example, I don't know, something. So tell her to do something in a positive way. Maybe if you say, you did that, maybe she doesn't cook enough. Maybe you'd like her to cook more often. So maybe the one time she cooks a meal, you say to her, that was so delicious. I was like one of the best meals I've ever had in my life. But don't you think you'd get a better response from that than if you say, you know what, you're lazy. You don't ever cook meals. You cook meals once a week. That's not enough. What do you think? So it's really a leader talks in the way the person needs to be spoken to get the results you want, not just the way you feel like I got to unload on you because you're bothering me and I want to complain to you.
All right, I understand. Particularly with positive affirmations.
Right.
I use that daily. I use it in my business and I use it in my personal relationships as well. As a matter of fact, I use it in all my relationships because there was this book that I read called Silver Boxes, which is basically noticing someone and understanding where they are and what they. So that part I understand. But what about when everything fails? When you just try your best and you just can't seem to get through to an individual?
Well, so really, I think most situations that you can, and you just have to, if what you're trying doesn't work, you just have to try something completely different.
Okay.
And I've seen that. I think everybody's tried situations, had challenges, and they keep trying. As an example, like you try this way, that way, another way. Then you say, you know what? Nothing is working. I'm going to do the complete opposite of what I've been doing all along. It shouldn't work, but I don't know what else to do. And you do it, and it works.
Yeah.
Because it's out of your usual pattern of thinking. Maybe that's how you have to change. Because if the other person is doing something you don't like, it means you have to change. Not the other person will change once you changed.
Ah, right. You know what? I do understand that because I've had. And I'm not talking about like a romantic relationship, but I've had relationships with people where I tried to meet them with what they were meeting me with, and I got no results. When I tried the exact opposite, it kind of throws them for a loop, and they're like, "Wait, why are you being so nice to me? Maybe I'm being, kind of a prick about." So I understand that works, but let's go back to the other part of the question, where our society has changed over the last 50 years in the fact that women have come into their own. They've gained a great deal of independence, where before 1964, it was a true dynamic of yin and yang, where usually the male was the provider and had ownership of making sure that the family had the resources that were required, while the wife or woman would manage those resources for the betterment of the family. But now it's changed, where it's not so much of a yin and yang, where there is just two straws that are next to each other, with women earning sometimes more than their spouse. And that's directly tied to a man's self-esteem in many instances. So how are men supposed to navigate this neo woman? I'll call it that.
Okay, that's a great question, because what I've come to realize, and researching this book, like I read stuff that was written 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, and one thing I learned is nothing has changed. For a while, post Second World War, we had this idea of, the man works, the woman stays home, raises the kids, and we thought the man was the powerhouse. He earned the money. That's something I often hear. Oh, well, the one who earns most money has the power. I know men who make big money. Their wives run them. Their wives control. Money does not mean anything. Leadership. Who runs a home? The one who shows leadership. And women want men who show leadership. I've had this told me by so many women, even to the point of, I've had single women say, a man asks them out on a date. Let's go out for a cup of coffee. He can't even decide where to go for a cup of coffee. He wants her to decide. He wants her to take the lead. They tell me it's a big turnoff. A woman wants a man who shows leadership. I've had women who are very successful in business, who make more than the men they're with, say, when I'm at my work, I may be a boss at work, but when I'm with a man, I want to feel like a woman. I want him to take charge. Women want men to take charge. They don't want them to control and be a tyrant, but they don't want a man who's passive, who just says, oh, what do you want? What should we do? Where would you like to go to eat? What time should I pick you up? Or, oh, what should we do about this problem? She wants a man who's aware. Women don't like telling men what to do. I'm serious. Men don't believe this, but it's really true. Like when a woman complains, oh, I have to tell him to take out the garbage. I always wonder, like, oh, what's so wrong with that? Because they don't want to tell a man what to do. They want him to be aware of what's going on in their home and their relationship. And if they see a problem, step forward and solve it. The example I like to give is, remember that show, Father Knows Best? Remember from the 1950s? You that old?
I'm not that old.
You can see it on reruns on the internet.
Yeah, reruns, yeah.
You know what it was, right?
I do know what it was.
Idyllic 1950s family. I mean, it was very idyllic and not realistic. But what happened was, every day the father came home and he became aware of what problems were going on in the family, what challenges, and he stepped forward and he showed leadership and he solved them. I mean, they were kind of like, nothing compared to what parents are facing today. It was very idealistic, but still, that's what women want. They want a man who comes home, doesn't just fall asleep, he's aware of what's going on in his family. He sees problems that his wife wasn't able to solve because there are some she can solve, but there's a problem she's not solving. I will step forward and solve it. And, when I tell men that if your wife doesn't respect you, you just become aware of what the situations at home, there are problems that need to be solved. Step forward and find a solution and implement it. At first, she may be like, she can't believe it, but just keep doing it, and you will be her hero, because that's what she wants. That's what when she says, I feel like my husband is one of the children, I feel like a married single parent, that's what she means, that he just comes home and man, I know working at a job is exhausting. You come home, you're exhausted. I say, save some of that energy to show your leadership at home, because that's why you're working hard at your job, to have a nice life, with your family, for your family. So the same thing, save some energy, be aware of what's going on, find solutions, implement it. That's what a leader does. Think about it. What does a leader do? He's not passive. He doesn't sit back to wait to be told what to do. He's aware of what's going on in the world, in his community. He sees this is a problem. We've got to solve it. I will find a solution and I will implement it. And if you have that vision, your wife will be inspired by you and she will be crazy about you.
Hey, here's a narrative that I've heard rather frequently from females, and this is in real life. This is in media, television, radio, whatever medium there is where you can hear this information. And I've heard where women have said, hey, I went to communicate an issue that I was having, and the man immediately wanted to provide a solution for it, and all I wanted to do was voice what's going on. Now, this is a imperative because I've seen this all my life, where there is a breakdown in communication where people don't say what they exactly want. And men are like that. Men are problem solvers. I'm a problem solver. If you come to me with an issue, I'm trying to find a solution for it ASAP. But that's not what I hear many, particularly young women, and when I say young, I mean 42 and under, want to deal with. They want someone who can read their mind and understand when they need a solution versus when they need an ear. What is your take on that?
Well, I think you just provided the answer. It's a matter of your own judgment. You have to realize, when does she want you to step forward and solve the problem, or when does she just want you to listen? And I think, most of the time when women just want you to listen, this is just my experience. It's really like a personal problem, like a problem with a girlfriend or something. Not like, well, our son is flunking out of school. I just want you to listen. No, she says to you, our kid is flunking out of school. She wants you to step forward and do something. But if she's saying, my friend, we went for coffee and she was so boring, and you say, well, why don't you get some new friends? Well, wait, they don't want that advice, right? I think that's my perception of the situation. I don't know if you agree with that.
It's really a delicate balance because, I have an inkling of this. I'm not going to say I understand it. I have an inkling of it because I'm a man. B, I grew up around a bunch of women who were very strong women, very kind of dominant because they came up from the South. They had to they worked in auto factories, and they always had to compete. Now, I'm going to jump across and ask you a question, which is, what about those homes where children are raised in broken families where the parents are divorced or separated and never married, or there were never quite a couple that just kind of stuck together? How are these people supposed to understand what relationships are without that dynamic of seeing it firsthand? Because if you read books, you can get if you get 25 books, you can get 25 different avenues to take. So how are people supposed to understand these relationships when they don't have a good example or a learning to go by?
You know what? You've identified a very big problem today. And when a young adult who grew up in such a home gets married, really, where does he have a clue of like falling back into what he saw his father do if he didn't have a father? That's really, it's a big problem. I don't, you watch television, the men are portrayed as buffoons.
Yes.
It's a very big problem. I know there are programs to kind of provide male role models for boys. It's, I don't think there's an easy answer. I think, people have to think about, my view. And really one of the reasons I wrote the book was to say, men need to change to become leaders and take more responsibility at home so that they don't end up divorced, so that kids don't end up in broken homes. And so they have an example of a couple, of a family, of what it's like to grow up with a mother and father who are married to each other and live together, so that when they get married, they have an example to live by. I don't know any simple answer or any, to that situation, except people realizing that, you have to think beyond yourself and say, well, I'm not happy right now. I'm going to divorce my husband, and think, well, wait, maybe I owe it to these children to like really work on it more and so they won't be from a broken family. I don't know any answers. What answers have you read? I'd be curious to hear what people say.
Well, I haven't seen many because I've seen some. I've seen quite a few challenges. That's the best way to say it. And overall, it's just a big, big challenge in just trying to understand a relationship. Now, for me, it's been really kind of difficult, and I have to step aside myself and slow down my thought process, slow down my emotional thought process. I'm on my second marriage. My wife is 17 years my junior, and there are kids involved. So I'm mature enough now at 50 years of age to, when I have those impulses to say something, when I have that impulse to do something, just do nothing for a second and say, okay, if you were standing outside yourself, how would this be perceived? Many people don't have that library to pull from. And in today's society, and I learned this when I was single for a couple of years, is I was very successful in the dating arena. But a woman told me this, a good friend of mine. She says, Emmett, I am not joking. I am literally trying to find a man who can carry his own self, does not live with his mother, and seemingly has most of his teeth. And I was like, that's pretty low bar. She was like, that's what we're dealing with. She was like, because most of the men who are about their salt are pretty much taken up, or they are so focused on their goal that it's really not a viable option for, immediately. So either I can hang out and hope this works out, or I can just go with what's available to satisfy whatever carnal emotional needs in the moment. So it's a really difficult thing, particularly in today's society, because there is so much propaganda that is taking your emotional thought process away from the true value of a relationship in the world today. For instance, Instagram, Facebook, just online, basic media, like you said, and I've seen this myself, where you look at television and all the dads are buffoons. They're just, dad, oh my God, you said that. Why are you wearing that? Even in the commercials. And the mom is the strong, smart one who pulls everything together. When you're being bombarded with that type of propaganda, it seeps in. So, with the help of books like yours, and this is what's really cool about your book, because you did it in story form. You did it with the relationship between a grandfather and his son. And the son is having problems in his own relationship, and he's wondering how all these people who are in his life have weathered the storm. And you're going through some principles. You mind if I go through some of the principles?
Sure. Go ahead.
So when you early on in the book, there was one thing that really stood out, which was, and it made me read it twice because I was like, huh? And I got it when I read it, but I wanted to see how it tied in. And it said, if you don't lead, I can't dance.
Right.
But some people don't know that they're supposed to follow.
Oh, that's an interesting point. Well, I think, you know what? It's interesting. When I talk to women about the book, and they'll say to me, so what does your book say it means to be a man? And I say, it means to be a leader. And they're like, they smile. Say, yeah, that's what they want. They really want a man who's a leader. And when a woman and man are dancing together, and the kind of dance where they actually hold each other, the woman does not want to lead. Right? You ever see a woman who leads the man in a dance?
I've never seen it.
She doesn't want that. She wants a man who knows how to lead in a dance and in life. So she that's what it means. I just thought it was a kind of neat example, because there's a story about there's some study that some psychologist said, there's this couples dance, right? When one steps forward, the other steps back. So I thought, well, that's interesting. But really, it's like a dance in another way, because if the man doesn't take the lead in the dance, the woman's going to be frustrated with him, and she won't want to dance with him.
I'm in full agreement with many of the things that you say. I just think that in today's society, there is a divide. And that divide comes along. I think it really began to propagate with Generation X, which is my generation, because we had a lot of things that, as a society, they said, this is the gold standard. And then everyone or many people were like, no, it's not. That doesn't apply to my circumstance, or that doesn't apply to many of us. So we don't identify with that. Also, I believe that with that rise in divorce and independence, people don't realize how much they have to depend on each other and understand strengths and weaknesses. So I really like in the book where you said she wants to admire and look up to you. She wants you to be strong. That I 100% agree upon with what you said in chapter 1.
Okay.
And I think a lot of the problems stem from chapter 2, which is knowing what you want. Now, this is unequivocally universal in the life that I've seen. If you ask anyone in particular, what do you want out of life, or what do you want? They can't answer it. And when you don't know what you want, I always say it's like this. If you don't know what you want, it's like being a sailboat in the ocean. There's a person in the boat, the sails are up, but they don't know where they're going to end up. So if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to man the sails. And when you end up in Antarctica versus Scotland, you have no one but to blame but yourself.
Okay, I think that's a good point, but I don't think that was what I was trying to convey in that chapter. It really was a case of know what you want. If you're always saying whatever you want, like I hear this all the time. Like a woman will ask a man, well, what should we do about this? And he says, whatever you want, you decide. That you have to know what you want, because she wants someone who knows what he wants.
I understand that. I understand exactly what you're saying in that vein. When there's a decision to be made, that the leadership should come into play, in the fact that either A, you know what she likes, so you're going to pick that because you know that's her favorite thing, or B, you want a new experience and you want her to experience that as well. But either way, you made a concrete decision into where the journey is going to go for both of you.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, yes, what you're saying is true, but really know what you want in terms of, like, don't be passive. Don't just think, I'll just do whatever she wants. She should be happy. You have to know what you want. If what you want is in complete disagreement with what your wife, then you discuss and compromise or come to some resolution. But just there's always like, well, I don't know what I want. I just whatever you want. I mean, I've heard that all the time. I was thinking just today. I was once in a wine store, and a fellow says to me, he's buying all this wine because he's getting married. He wants to try these different bottles of wine. So I said, well, that's great. You're getting married. So let me give you one piece of advice. I didn't know this guy. I said, don't forget, you're the man. And he says, oh, no, I let her make all the decisions. It's better that way. I said, well, good luck. But I didn't know this guy. I wasn't going to go the whole session with him. But it was interesting that was his reaction, that it's better if I just let her make the decisions. Because, people say then he thinks he's a nice guy. And then he also thinks the kicker is that if things go wrong, you can't blame him because we just did what you wanted. Doesn't work. You're responsible. So you better, since you're going to be held responsible, you better take responsibility. And doesn't mean you can't do what your wife wants, but you better, have some thoughts about it and make sure it's the right thing. And if it's not the right thing, you have to step forward and like I said earlier, be strong and take responsibility and show leadership.
Yeah, I think it is very much how do I want to put this? It is a feel. And in some instances where you think you are correct in leading, you may be actually being construed as pushing, because a lot of it is perception. Because what someone does for one person, if they were with another person, it may be totally fine. So it's really based on the relationship. But I also think, like, particularly in our current state of affairs of relationships, that we are totally caught off guard and that we don't have a common premise of getting together other than mutual attraction.
No, that's true too. I mean, but people are, you know, when a man is attracted to a woman, and that's natural, but he's got to look for more than that. Okay, once you're attracted to her, it's good, but make sure there's more than just that physical attraction. That there's some commonality of values and goals, and that she wants to live the same kind of life that you want. I know a woman whose husband ran a marriage course, and like in her church, and she told me that first thing they do, they give a survey to everybody and say, what do you want? Do you want kids? Do you want that? Like, what do you want? What are your goals for this marriage? And she couldn't believe how in some situations with the man and the woman, what they want is so different. Like one wants kids, what the other absolutely does not want kids. So they tell them, like, maybe you should, postpone getting married and really talk to each other about this, because maybe they're attracted to each other, but you better make sure you want the same goals. And that's attraction is nice, it's a great feeling, but you now take it to the next few steps.
But that attraction thing is extremely powerful, and I often say that men are under the influence of a very rampant drug, and that drug is testosterone, because. And I've seen this in myself, and I've seen it in my friends as well, where they have this attraction to someone who is just the worst candidate for their life. And there's no rhyme or reason, that there's nothing you can say, nothing you can do that will just dissuade you unless you experience it firsthand. And I've seen this, but this is not a one size fits all, because the principles that you place in the book are very strong principles, and it harkens to a time that goes a long way back, because we've been on this earth for thousands of years, and the relationships have endured. One of the biggest things that I think has compromised the relationship status and understanding is the fact that our inner circles are too big, where once upon a time you had a very close knit, and that close knit group helped to protect the overall, because everybody had kind of a similar mindset. But now, since the world has opened up with the internet and other things, it's come to shift people's mindset to saying, well, maybe this is viable too, instead of sticking to the time-tested principles.
No, that's true. That's true. And I mean, it's not just the internet. I mean, it's the media, like before that, television and movies, which were around long before the internet. And I think part of it is the declining influence of fathers in families, where so many kids grow up without fathers. Father is an important person in a child's life, whether it's a boy or a girl. Like I often say, a daughter will choose a man who's like her father. So that means you have to be, as a father, have to be an example of the kind of man you want your daughter to choose. That's a big responsibility. So if there's no father to be that role model, she's really lost. She's really missing out on a lot. And of course, the same thing with a boy, right? A boy learns from his father, watches his father, sees how his father treats women, treats his wife. He learns from his father. So that's why I think, the internet and all these other things are powerful, but really you have to counter that with a father who realizes his responsibilities to his children, and it goes beyond just bringing in money, because everybody needs money, but you also have a responsibility to be that role model for your son and daughter.
Yeah, I believe it. I also think that we almost, and I believe churches actually have this program, but there should be a program prior to actually dating or getting married, because you're right, there used to be a rite of passage before you were allowed by the community to do certain things or to partake in certain actions. And I remember succinctly when I was 24 23 or 24 years old, and I was recently married, and I was just not understanding what was going on. I remember going to the bookstore because I'm an avid reader and seeking help on relationships and understanding a different person. And I had been with this person for 5 years, but all of a sudden when we got married, certain things changed. And I just wasn't understanding, but I realized something. Most of the books that were on relationships, particularly in like 1990 something, or early 1990s, were written from women. And they weren't giving men the tools that were required to be successful in their relationships. But I really commend you for actually writing this book.
Thank you. And that's, I mean, the situation hasn't changed. I mean, today, most relationship books are written for women because it's their favorite topic. If you ever sit in a coffee house and listen in the conversations, but that women are having, they're talking about their relationships. So, most books are written for women. A lot of the books that are for men, the few that are out there are really, how to get laid, how to seduce women. And there are some that saying, and that's, people ask me, is that what this book is about? I said, no, it's not about how to seduce women. It's really about how to make a relationship with a woman to work and be the kind of man she really wants a man to be. And women have said to me, my husband had understood the principles in this book, we wouldn't be divorced after all these years. And I've had men write to me that, this book has saved their marriage. So really, it's very rewarding and to hear that and to realize, there are things that men need to learn that can make a difference in improving their marriages.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So do you have any quick and dirty tips for men to understand what they need to do just from your own perspective?
So the three most plain, that means be aware of what's going on, see situations that need to be dealt with, step forward, take charge, and find a solution.
Can you start over
Make
again?
decisions.
You broke up a little bit.
Okay. The three most important things are show leadership, which means know what's going on in your home, know what's going on in your relationship. If you see a problem, a situation that needs your leadership, step forward, find a solution, take charge, and implement it. Your wife will love you for it. Number two, make decisions. Women can't stand it when you say, yes, dear, whatever you want, you decide. They feel like they're a married single parent. They feel like their husband is one of the children, even for simple things. Like a woman says, I asked my husband where we should go on vacation, where he wants to go on vacation. He said, you decide. He's like one of the children. And you think, well, I'm letting her decide. She should be happy. No, make decisions. She can disagree with you. You can discuss it, but make a decision. If you're planning a date, don't ask your date where you want to go. Think of, do some research, find something you both enjoy doing and suggest it. She might say, I already saw that movie, and then you got to find something else. But don't just say, oh, what do you want to do? And the third thing is very important. Take responsibility. You're going to be held responsible. Take responsibility. Nobody has any sympathy for a man who just blames his wife. Says, oh, I gave in to her, and and it went wrong just like I thought it would. And you think you're the victim. Nobody has any sympathy for you because they'll say, you're the man. Why did you let it go on? Even though we believe in gender equality, underneath it all, we'll say, you're the man. You're supposed to not let it go on if you know it's wrong. Three things. Show leadership, make decisions, take responsibility. And remember, you're going to be held responsible, so take it.
Very good, very good, very good. So let me ask you, what do you have in store in the next couple of months? Do you have any speaking engagements? Do you have any workshops? What do you have planned to move forward with?
Well, I am in the process of developing a workshop. I haven't yet, approached organizations to present it, but I'm developing it because I think there's a lot of situations, a lot of workplaces where men work long hours. They make very good incomes, but they go home. their wives don't respect them because they just come home and, like I said, they feel like they're one of the children. So that's really what I'm trying to focus on, how to be a man, and how to be a better husband. So I'm developing that workshop and hopefully be ready soon. And then I'll be out promoting it, getting it out, getting the word out.
Very, 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 very good. And have you approached churches for your book? That would be a good outlet and venue for you to move forward. Because I could see it actually as a church workshop, because a lot of relationships are based in faith, and that's a good jumping point for it.
Okay, great idea. Thank you. I'm going to follow up.
No problem. Well, you can get the book, Being the Strong Man a Woman Wants, Timeless Wisdom on Being a Man. Now, really quickly, I'm going to go through the table of contents, if I can stop dropping things, and you can hear me turn in the wonderful pages of the book. And so, for instance, 1, if you don't lead, I can't dance. Chapter 2, be strong, or being strong. Chapter 3, knowing what you want. Chapter 4, leadership. Chapter 5, it's not being controlling. Number 6, and this is an important one, listening. Number 7, being worthy. A lot of people miss that. Just being worthy. That used to be a thing, and it's not so much promoted anymore. Number 8, being entitled. Number 9, taking full responsibility. Another one that is a timeless caption. Number 10, growing stronger. Number 11, being manly. Number 12, giving. Number 13, goal setting. Number 14, knowing what's going on. Number 15, think before you act. Number 16, making decisions. Number 17, watch men who are strong. Number 18, money. Number 19, the big house. Number 20, working. And number 21, the final chapter, this is what it meant all along. Actually, you know what? Just reading those chapters actually sounds like Life 101. So you might get 2 things in one by reading your book.
A lot of life lessons, absolutely.
So I always ask my guests this. If you were sitting on your couch and you're watching TV, relaxing, and you heard your doorbell ring, ding dong, and you got up and went to the door, you opened the door and there was your 21-year-old self. And your 21-year-old self looked at you and said, don't be alarmed. It's all good. I just have a question to ask you. And after you gained your composure, you said, okay, what is that question? And the question is, what advice do you have for me? What would you tell yourself?
You know what I would tell myself? Focus on developing leadership skills, because it's the same leadership skills that you can apply in a relationship, apply in other situations. And don't be afraid. Don't be timid. Don't think that you can't do it. You can do it.
Awesome. Well, it's been great having you on the show. Where can everyone get the book?
Okay, it's available on Amazon as a paperback and as a Kindle ebook. It's also on iBooks and Kobo as an ebook. And it's also in bookstores. And if they're sold out, just ask them to order it and they'll get it to you pretty quickly.
And what is your website?
It's www.elliottskatz.com. Elliott is spelled ELLIOTTKATZ.com. And if people want to email me through the website, I'd be happy to hear any thoughts. If they get a chance to read the book, any comments, I welcome any questions. Be happy to hear from them.
Awesome. So whenever you have something coming out, whenever you're doing something, don't be a stranger. Let me know so I can at least post it on the website. And ladies and gentlemen, that website is emmettmuckles.com. That's EMMITT, and then Muckles, MUCKLES.com. Thanks, Elliott. It was awesome having you here.
It was great talking to you, Emmett.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast. Thank you so much. Till next time, make sure you love yourself, because if you love yourself, then the love will gravitate towards you, because like attracts like. Peace.